Hepatitis C is a blood-borne virus that infects the liver. Throughout this film we will be interviewing professionals in the field and people who have engaged in treatment for hepatitis C with their shared experience. The aim of this DVD is to dispel fears around the treatment, bring hope to those who are going through the treatment or are thinking of going on the treatment, and to inform and educate people.
Hepatitis C is a blood-borne virus. It's a virus which has a predilection for attacking the liver. It's contracted through blood transmission and it causes it comes in two forms. It can cause an acute inflammation of the liver called an acute hepatitis, which in the vast majority of cases is unnoticed. So people who get infected with it don't know they've got it usually in the acute phase. The other thing it can do in years down the line is produce a chronic inflammation of the liver called chronic hepatitis, and that is the area which is most important. Chronic hepatitis can progress to cirrhosis of the liver and subsequently lead on to end-stage liver disease and death. There are several different types of hepatitis C. There are 6 what we call genotypes, and the prevalence of each genotype varies for where you are within the world, and surprisingly they're called genotypes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And there are subgroups which are clinically irrelevant. In the UK, Europe and the US, the commonest subtypes are genotype 1, which is about 60% of the patients we see, and genotypes 2 and 3, which accounts for about 40%.
You can contract hepatitis C by various ways, but essentially it's a blood-borne virus. So people will have been in contact with infected blood at some point. The most common presentation of hepatitis C patients is with them having a history of intravenous drug use. And it's not just sharing of needles that is the problem there. I think the message that was missed was that it was sharing of paraphernalia that goes along with intravenous drug use and the blood that was contained within that paraphernalia. So sharing spoons, filters, etc. has been passing on the virus. There is a small risk of sexual transmission, around 5%, but that is rare. There is a risk of vertical transmission, which is from an infected mother to a baby. Again, that's less than you would think in terms of risk. That's around 5% as well. You can contract hepatitis C through snorting drugs. People commonly use cocaine, but also amphetamines and other drugs. And what we think happens is that the nasal lining becomes irritated. So if you're sharing a banknote or a straw or whatever to inhale the drug, then the blood from the irritated nasal lining will get passed on to the next person. You certainly used to be able to contract hepatitis C through tattoos. When I say that, I mean professional tattooists now have got very good standards of hygiene as a whole. And certainly if people are drawing tattoos themselves or in amongst a group of friends, perhaps in prison, then that does increase the risk of passing hepatitis C. It's important to note that you can't contract hepatitis C through hugging people, through kissing people, through just sharing crockery and cutlery, kind of, household stuff. So it's not going to be transmitted like that. What it may be transmitted by, again, thinking of the blood-to-blood risk, is sharing toothbrushes, nail files, razors, and those kind of things, where there's an obvious risk of blood-to-blood transmission. Hepatitis C is a blood-borne virus, so in order to prevent transmission of the virus, we need to be careful with blood and blood products. So, in essence, if you are using intravenous drugs, then you should be using your own equipment. And there's enough equipment out there now to be single-use stuff. So use it once and get rid of it in an appropriate manner. By going down to your local service provider and getting all the needles and paraphernalia that you need. It's there, it's freely available, and it's there to be used. I've heard lots of myths and lots of supposed facts about hepatitis C while I've been doing this. My favourite one was somebody asked me whether hepatitis C turned your blood green or not. And of course the answer to that is no.
Some other myths that people have about it, I think in the past people heard that you had to get a liver biopsy, and that was often quite a big concern, and there were talks of an enormous needle that was used to take some sort of large slice of your liver away and how painful it could be. And really it wasn't as bad as that, and nowadays treatment doesn't tend to be decided on a liver biopsy, so that it's, people get a blood test or get 2 blood tests, get sent to a liver specialist who then make a decision around treatment, usually without a liver biopsy. So I think one misconception is that there isn't anything that can be done for hepatitis C, and certainly these days, and for quite a number of years, there's been some very successful treatments for hepatitis C, and I think that would be a very important message to get across. Another thing which people think is a barrier is if they're drinking alcohol, and although that certainly makes it less likely that they would be started in treatment in some treatment areas around the country, it's still important that people are known to the system so that when they are ready for going into treatment, that they can be immediately plugged into that treatment. So it shouldn't be a barrier to them coming forward. Also, once they are in the process, it'll give them a much bigger impetus to actually think, well, maybe I should decrease my drinking. Maybe now is the time, if everyone's ready, to start giving me some interferon and ribavirin treatment. In pregnancy, people won't be treated with interferon and ribavirin, but they'll still be worried about the risk of passing on hepatitis C to their unborn child. And although there is a small risk, it's quoted as being a 5% risk of hepatitis C being passed on. So that means it's a 95% chance that it's not going to be. When people come into clinic and they say that they want to get tested, then we'll arrange for a blood test. And as I mentioned before, the first blood test is just to see whether you've had the virus. So it looks for antibodies. The second test, if that comes back positive, is looking for the actual virus itself to see whether that's in your bloodstream. When that test comes back, if that's still positive, so you've definitely got hepatitis C virus, then we refer you to a hepatologist, so that's a liver specialist. Dry blood spot testing is something that's coming to the fore recently. We're quite excited about it. We've had some difficulty in getting blood testing for people. We often see people in not quite non-clinical environments, but in not so clinical environments, so getting blood tests done there is problematic. Referring someone to the GP for a blood test is another trip that someone's got to go and get organised, and they might not have that great a relationship with a GP, and so that's a barrier to getting the test done at all. So dry blood spot testing is something that's quite exciting. It's just a quick nick to your finger to get a blood. It gets spotted onto a card, and the laboratory that it gets sent off to can get the results from that very small amount of blood. One of the other things that people might have heard about hepatitis C treatment is that it can badly affect your mood. And when you've had an injection of interferon, it sort of gives you symptoms a bit like having a cold. And for some people, having a cold isn't too bad, and for some people you feel pretty dreadful.
The injections have to be given weekly, and they have to be given under the skin, and our patients are trained and taught how to do that by our nurse practitioner, Mr. Rowland. In addition to interferon, we actually use another drug called ribavirin, which is a tablet taken twice or 3 times daily, and that's called combination therapy. So we'll concentrate on genotypes 1, 2 and 3. It's important to look at genotype because different genotypes respond differently to treatment. Genotype 1, which is probably just about the most prevalent one, in the US it's 60%, the UK maybe 50 to 60% of genotype 1s, and the ones we see it's around 55%. It's a bit harder to get rid of that virus. Genotypes 2 and 3, it's much easier. For the 2s and 3s, we're about 80 to 90% successful in eradicating it. Genotype 1s, we're only about 60% successful in eradicating the virus completely.
Sharon is 43 years old. She had been using drugs for approximately 22 years. Throughout her using, Sharon contracted hepatitis C as a result of sharing paraphernalia. She had been diagnosed with hepatitis C in 1999 with a genotype 1. She went on interferon treatment in 2009 for 6 months, and she has now cleared the virus and hasn't used drugs for over 6 years.
I first picked up drugs at the age of 14 to feel a part of and to be included. Got further down the line, everybody else was putting it down and getting on with their lives, and I couldn't. And I started taking drugs to get obliterated. I didn't take them to have fun. You know, I took them because I wanted to get off my face. And I picked up heroin at the age of 20, which I would class as my drug of choice, heroin and alcohol together. But it got so bad that I couldn't inject. I'd injected everywhere in my body apart from my groin. All my veins had collapsed, but it didn't stop me using. I overdosed 4 times and stopped breathing. My sister turned up every time I was there and gave me CPR. You know, so by rights I should be dead. You know, and it wasn't until 2003 that I actually, you know, made that decision to throw the towel in and surrender. I'd had enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired and fighting, you know, fighting my addiction. And I wanted a better way of life. I wanted to live. I wanted a life. You know, I didn't have a life before. I contracted hepatitis C possibly by injecting drugs using the same paraphernalia as other people, but also I have a lot of tattoos, that homemade tattoos, and I could have that's another way to contract hepatitis C. When I was first diagnosed with hepatitis C, I was in treatment. It was 10 years ago. And I was told that I would probably end up with cirrhosis of the liver, even if I never drank or used again, which really frightened me. Because I'd not been clean long. I was like just sort of starting out on recovery at the time, thinking that this was my new life, and then I'd sort of been hit with this bombshell, you know, that maybe it was going to take years off my life, you know. My fears about going on the treatment were, one of them was having to inject myself for a start, because I was worried that would trigger off, you know, using thoughts and having to use needles, even though I didn't have a clue how you had to do it or anything. I don't cope very well with being ill. I don't do physical illness very well. I was scared of that. I was scared of all the horror stories that I'd heard, you know, and that I'd chose to listen to. But I wanted it, you know. Being on the treatment was up and down, really. I suppose only people who used would understand when I say it was like having a dirty hit for 3 days solid. It was really awful. I was really ill, and it frightened me. But it got easier as the treatment went on. My main issues were emotional. I'd like burst into tears at the drop of a hat, you know. But I didn't really suffer a lot of pain, sort of thing. It was more like headaches. I feel good about my life today. I'm really pleased that I did it, that I took the treatment when I was offered it, because I do actually feel like I have a new lease of life. It's taken a lot of worry away from me, you know. I'm a lot more positive, you know, about my health and my well-being, and you know, it's just a really positive thing. I believe it's a really positive thing to do, to give yourself an opportunity, you know, to clear it, because within 2 months of having the treatment, it was cleared. I would say to someone who was thinking of going for the treatment would be, go for it, grab it with both hands. You know, it's a positive thing, it's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing.
Darren is 33 years old. He had been using drugs for approximately 20 years. Throughout his using, Darren contracted hepatitis C as a result of sharing needles. Darren had contracted hepatitis C in 2003 and was diagnosed in 2005 with genotype 3. He went on interferon treatment in 2008 for 6 months, and he has now cleared the virus and hasn't been using drugs for over 3 years.
I started when I was really young, 9 years of age. Chemicals, it was start with solvents, petrol, gas, glue, the usual. Well, anything that said you shouldn't sniff, I sniff really, do you know what I mean? Progressed to softer drugs, cannabis, amphetamines, LSD. That was in me like early, late teens, and then went to prison because I was funding the habit, funding the drug use, and introduced to heroin. Once I'd started on that, the behaviours what I needed to do to get drugs were worse. So I was in and out of jail for a few years, introduced to other drugs. I did crack, I used crack, didn't hammer it like I did heroin. Heroin was the place that I got to that it was, at the end was horrendous, you know what I mean? Towards the end I wanted to die, you know what I mean? Using weren't fun anymore. Early days it was nice, it was good, it was escapism, and I enjoyed it, but towards the end I didn't like it anymore, you know what I mean? I wanted to die really, and I tried to do that. You know, I tried to take my own life more than one occasion because drugs had took me that far. I contracted hepatitis C through sharing needles with somebody who'd got hepatitis C, but I thought I'd be invincible to that because I'd been shown ways to clean the needles, and I thought it was fireproof that way, but obviously it wasn't, because I ended up with it. Initially, when I first found out, I thought I was going to die, but I really, when it sunk in, it was my own fault really. I used needles with somebody who'd got the virus, and I don't know, just as a result of my using drugs is why, you know what I mean, I don't know how I felt really. I just felt this is a consequence of me taking drugs and sharing needles with somebody that got hepatitis C. Once I'd found out I'd contracted it and that there was help available, once I got over the fear of me thinking I was going to die, and there was help available, and I was listening to these people that were there to help, I don't believe I had many fears around it. It was the case of telling me what was going to be like, and they can only tell you that. You're only going to get to experience it when you go on it. So I don't believe I had that many fears around going on the treatment. Just a case of what's this experience going to be like, do you know what I mean? Being on the treatment was like initially being hit with a ton of bricks. It was difficult. It was like having a dirty dig. But you know, I've gone through worse. At that point, it felt like it was the worst thing I'd been through in my life. But I'd been through worse. Do you know what I mean? But just at that point in my life, and it felt horrendous. But it got lesser. Do you know what I mean? It got lesser. It got easier. It got like I was getting the hang of it. Then it'd give me a curveball, and then I'd be sideswiped with it for a little while. Do you know what I mean? And then it just eventually, I accepted what I was doing, what I was going through, and I'm going to have side effects from these drugs because they're powerful drugs. And I accepted that. Yeah, it was hard, but I was going to get through it with the help and support that I had. The advice I'd give to somebody that's going to engage in the treatment is go for it. Don't hold back. Just, you know what I mean, listen to people that are there to help. They're there, and they're there wanting to help you, to make your life better, you know, and because I engage with the people that wanted to help me, and my life's got better as a result of that. Don't hold back. Don't listen to people that's negative. Just push through it because you're doing it for yourself and to help yourself, and you will. How do I feel about my life today? Grateful. I'm alive. I feel blessed that I'm here today. I'm enjoying a life, do you know what I mean, that I dreamt about really, that I dreamed about, and it's come true, you know. From how my life, as I explained earlier, how my life was, it was a misery, it was a hell. How my life today is, you know what I mean. I feel blessed, fortunate. I'm breathing, I'm living, and I've got a life, I've got a beautiful partner, I've got a beautiful son, I've got 2 babies on the way, do you know what I mean, which I feel blessed for as well, do you know what I mean. I've got things that, like I said, they were dreams and they're not dreams anymore. I'm capable of living this life, you know. I've got friends, I've got activities that I do. I go to college, which is an amazement to myself, do you know what I mean? Because from the way I live to the way I thought about myself, I'm at college today, do you know what I mean? I have a child, I've got responsibility and I live up to them. And life today, I want to live. I reached the point in my using where I wanted to die, do you know what I mean? Today I want to live and live for as long as possible. You know, I've got things that I can do in my life, you know what I mean? I've got social activities, football, going out, activities with friends, you know what I mean? And life's great, you know what I mean? I ain't got no complaints today, and life's got better than what it was.